Hi everyone, it's Global Scholarships and I'm your host Az. I hope you're all doing well. And today we're going to talk about the cost of studying in Canada. So let's start from the beginning. Is it expensive for international students to study in Canada? Yes, Canada is comparatively expensive, but a lot of students believe it's worth studying in Canada because of the high level of education, depending on the city, which we'll get to in a minute. Transportation and food choices. You might expect to spend around 2,000 to 10,000 Canadian dollars a month. And then we have tuition fees, which depends on the university and the degree level. So it's really important to have an idea about total cost of living because you really don't want to go into this unprepared. Okay, so let's have a nice little breakdown of the costs that you would probably encounter in Canada as an international student. First, we have, of course, tuition fees, which can vary. For example, for undergraduates, it can range between 25,000 to 67,000 Canadian dollars, while for graduates, it can reach to something around 70,000 Canadian dollars. But there are a lot of options to lighten this financial burden, like scholarships, studentships, and entrance awards. So let's take a look at some of the most popular universities in Canada and see what kind of tuition fees they have. Among the most popular universities in Canada, we have University of Toronto, University of British Columbia, McGill University, McMaster University, and University of Alberta. But of course, tuition fees are not the only academic costs. For example, you will have to pay application fees, which is around 100 to 150 Canadian dollars. Also, you have health insurance, which can range between 600 to 1,000 Canadian dollars per year. And then there are on-campus dues for utilities like libraries and stuff. So another $500 to $1,000. And all of these numbers depend on the institution. So it's really important to investigate these numbers for the university that you are planning to apply to avoid bad surprises. One example to consider is the University of Toronto, one of the most popular universities in Canada. It has an application fee of 180 Canadian dollars for international students. Then you have the university health insurance plan for overseas students, which at the University of Toronto is about 720 Canadian dollars a year, which adds up to $900 a year. And trust me, $900 a year is not an expense that you want to meet unprepared. So we get it, universities are expensive, big surprise. But what about living costs? Now here are some of the best cities to live in Canada. Let's see how much they cost to live in. At number 1, we have Toronto. Toronto, being the financial heart of Canada, attracts many students worldwide. But this urban living comes with a high cost. Monthly rent in Toronto can vary from $1,200 to $2,500 Canadian dollars, depending on the location and the living arrangement. And one person might spend around $300 to $400 Canadian dollars monthly on groceries, while transportation costs roughly $100 to $150 Canadian dollars. Other factors like recreational activities and personal expenses also raise these numbers. So in total, University of Toronto estimates that the annual living expenses of an international student is around 15,000 Canadian dollars. And in number 2, we have Vancouver. Vancouver has an amazing landscape and a surprising level of multiculturalism, so it draws a lot of global students. Unfortunately, this also means a significant financial burden. Rents can range from $1,500 to $2,500 Canadian dollars per month, and groceries will amount to $300 to $400 Canadian dollars a month, while transportation expenses fall between $9 to $120 Canadian dollars. So University of British Columbia in Vancouver estimates the average yearly expenses of an international student to be around 16,000 Canadian dollars, which is surprisingly more expensive than Toronto. And in number 3, we have Montreal. Now, Montreal might be a more suggestible option because it's more budget-friendly and has a more bilingual character. The cost of rent varies from $800 to $1,500 Canadian dollars per month, which is nearly half of the rents in Vancouver. The estimated monthly expenses for groceries can be between $250 and $350 Canadian dollars, and transportation fees range from $60 to $90 Canadian dollars. In short, it's way more budget-friendly than Toronto and Vancouver, so it might be a cost-effective option. And McGill University in Montreal states that the yearly cost of living for an international student is around 12,000 Canadian dollars. Alright, so these are all very expensive. So how can we minimize the cost? Well, first of all, of course, we have scholarships. There are many scholarships that you can go for that will help you considerably to take care of these expenses. For example, we have Canadian government scholarships like Veneer Canada Graduate Scholarships, which aim to bring in outstanding doctoral students with substantial financial aid. Then we have university-specific scholarships. For example, Lester B. Pearson International Scholarship provided by the University of Toronto, which you can learn more about here. This is a very competitive scholarship that covers the cost of tuition, textbooks, incidental charges, and extensive accommodation support for your entire education. Well, scholarships are not easy to get, as we all know that. You're right, but that's not your only option. Canada also has part-time work opportunities for international students. You can enroll in Canadian institutions to have the chance to engage in part-time employment during your education, which gives you not only additional funds, but also practical experience. Usually, you can work for up to 20 hours per week during the regular study periods and full-time when school is on a break. Also, many universities have job opportunities in the university, primarily designed for international students. These can be in library settings, student zones, and campus food joints. You can search for these in the school's career development resources or just by checking the job bulletin boards. So that's it. In a nutshell, studying in Canada is expensive, but it doesn't have to be unaffordable. There are a lot of ways to make it easier for yourself. For example, you can choose an inexpensive city. For example, there is around a 30% difference between Montreal and Vancouver. You can also lighten your financial burden by applying for scholarships or enrolling in part-time jobs. And if you have no idea about where to start at all, we have a lot of helpful links in the description. Check them out. Also, join our live streams on Fridays. We look into more scholarship opportunities and you can come and ask any questions that you might have. As always, for more comprehensive guides on studying abroad as well as scholarship opportunities, visit our website at globalscholarships.com. See you in the next one.